What happens when an undercover CEO visits his own diner, only to witness a manager mistreat a struggling family in need? David Miller tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, staring at the familiar sign that hung above Miller's Diner, a place for everyone. It was more than just a slogan. It was a promise David had made when he opened his first restaurant 15 years ago in a bustling neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois. Back then, David had been the guy in the kitchen, sweating over a hot grill, delivering food to tables and shaking hands with every customer who walked through the door. But now David ran a chain of over 20 diners across the state. Success had taken him out of the kitchen and put him behind a desk. He trusted his managers to uphold his values, warmth, generosity, and respect for everyone who walked through the door. But lately, troubling reports had surfaced, complaints about rude staff, customers being turned away, and worst of all, whispers that some families in need had been mistreated. His corporate team had brushed off the concerns as isolated incidents, but David wasn't convinced. He needed to see things for himself. David climbed out of his car, adjusting his old denim jacket and faded baseball cap. His usual sharp suit had been swapped for worn-out jeans and scuffed sneakers. To the staff inside, he was just another tired traveler looking for a hot meal. He stepped inside and inhaled the scent of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee. The place looked just as he remembered: red booths, checkered floors, and framed photos of smiling families on the walls. But something felt off. The energy was colder. Employees moved quickly, barely making eye contact with customers. The warmth was missing. David took a seat in the corner, scanning the room quietly. Moments later, the front door jingled as a young family walked in. A mother, father, and 2 kids. A boy around 10 and a little girl no older than 6. Their clothes were worn, the father's boots scuffed, and the mother's jacket frayed at the sleeves. Despite their appearance, they walked in with hopeful smiles. They sat in a nearby booth, and David overheard their quiet conversation. "Just something small for the kids," the mother whispered. "We'll figure the rest out." A few minutes later, a man in a pressed shirt and polished shoes strolled over. His name tag read, "Robert, Manager." His smile was thin and forced. "Afternoon," Robert said briskly. "What can I get you?" "We'd like a couple of kids' meals," the father John said, pulling a few crumpled bills from his wallet, "and maybe some soup for us." Robert's smile faded. He glanced at the money. "Is that all you've got?" "Yes," the mother, Maria, said softly. "We're just going through a rough time." Robert snorted. "Look," he said, his voice sharp, "this isn't a charity. If you can't pay for a proper meal, maybe you shouldn't be eating out." Maria's face reddened. "I understand," she murmured. We thought—" "Well, you thought wrong," Robert interrupted. "I've got paying customers waiting for tables." He gestured toward the door. "I suggest you figure things out somewhere else." The little girl, Emily, clutched her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, I'm hungry," I said. "Out," Robert barked. His tone made the little girl flinch. David's blood boiled. He rose from his seat. "Hold on," David said, walking over. "They're not going anywhere." Robert turned, surprised. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," David said firmly. He knelt beside the little girl. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emily," she said.
Softly. "Emily?" David smiled. "How about some pancakes? Does that sound good?"
Her eyes lit up.
"Yes, please."
David straightened and turned to Robert. "Get this family whatever they need. I'll pay for it." Robert's smirk returned. "Yeah, and who exactly are you?" "Just someone who knows how to treat people," David said coldly. "Now go put in their order." Robert scoffed. "Look, buddy, if you want to waste your money, fine. But people like them, they just take advantage. It's bad for business." "Bad for business," David repeated. His voice dropped low. "You think turning away hungry kids is good for business? Think keeping freeloaders out keeps paying customers happy?" Robert sneered. "This place doesn't need people like that hanging around." David's fists clenched. He'd heard enough. "You know what?" David said, stepping closer. "Tomorrow I'll be back and I'll be having a long talk with the owner. Yeah, Robert chuckled. Good luck with that. Oh, David said with a tight smile. I think he'll listen. As Robert disappeared into the kitchen, David turned back to the family. I'm sorry about that, he said gently. You're welcome here, always. Thank you, Maria whispered. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, David replied. No one should be treated like that. As Emily's eyes brightened with excitement at her soon-to-arrive pancakes, David knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow, Robert's smug grin wouldn't last long. Tomorrow, David wouldn't be just another customer. Tomorrow, he'd return as David Miller, CEO, and this diner was about to change. The next morning, David Miller stepped into Miller's diner once again, this time dressed in his usual tailored suit and polished shoes. Gone was the casual look of Dave the Traveler. Today, David was back as the CEO, and he had no intention of staying quiet. The morning rush had just begun. Wait. Staff hurried between tables. Coffee cups clattered against saucers, and Robert, the smug manager from the night before, stood confidently near the counter, laughing with another employee. David's eyes narrowed. Robert clearly hadn't given last night's incident a second thought. Morning, David greeted as he approached the counter. Robert turned, barely sparing David a glance. Yeah, morning. What do you want? I'd like to speak to the owner, David said firmly. Robert snorted. Buddy, the owner doesn't have time for guys like you. I think he'll make time, David replied, placing his business card on the counter. David Miller, CEO, Miller Restaurant Group. Robert's smirk vanished. His face turned pale. Wait, That's right, David interrupted. And we need to talk. In the manager's office. David stood behind Robert's desk while the manager shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I want you to explain what I saw last night, David said, arms crossed. You turned away a struggling family, a family that needed our help, and you did it with a smile on your face. Look, I didn't mean anything by it, Robert muttered. I was just following policy. Policy? David scoffed. We've never had a policy that says we deny service to families in need. This diner was built on the idea that everyone is welcome here, and you know that. With all due respect, Robert said bitterly, I was doing what's best for the business. If you start feeding every hard luck case that walks through the door, people will take advantage. We'll lose money. We'll lose money? David repeated, his voice rising. You think turning away a family in need is how we stay profitable? Robert shrugged. I was just trying to keep the place running. No, David shot back. You were trying to take the easy way out, and you humiliated a family in the process. Robert's shoulders slumped. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Well, it is, David said, and you've made it clear you don't share my values. He paused. I'll be handling things myself for the rest of the week, and we'll discuss your future after that. Wait, Robert stammered. You're suspending me? Effective immediately, David said coldly. Now get your things and go. Robert stormed out, muttering under his breath. That afternoon, David gathered the diner employees in the break room. Faces were tense, uncertain of what this unexpected meeting meant. I know Robert's been running this place his way for a while, David began. But that's over now. I'm taking charge and things are going to change. He paused, scanning the room. Last night, I saw a family humiliated because they couldn't afford a full meal. That's not what this diner stands for, and it never will be. But, one waitress, Lisa, spoke up. Robert said we were supposed to keep tables turning fast. He didn't want us wasting time on customers who weren't spending much. That's not how we do things, David said firmly. We take care of people because that's what good businesses do. But what if people start taking advantage? A cook named Mark asked. I mean, some folks try to scam free food. I get that. David nodded. But turning away struggling families isn't the answer. If someone's, in real need, we help them. Simple as that. So what happens now? Lisa asked. Starting tomorrow, David replied. This diner is going back to the values it was built on. Kindness, respect, and community. The next day, David arrived early and rolled up his sleeves. He spent the morning greeting customers, delivering plates, and bussing tables alongside the staff. Word quickly spread that the boss was working the floor, and regular customers were curious. Midway through the morning rush, David spotted a man sitting alone in the corner, John, the father from the family. Robert had turned away. John's wife and kids weren't with him this time, and he looked nervous. David grabbed a coffee pot and walked over. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. John looked up, surprised. Sure." David poured John a fresh cup of coffee. "I'm really sorry about what happened the other night," he said. "No one should be treated like that." John sighed. "It's all right. I get it. Things are tough for everyone right now." "That's no excuse," David said. "We should have been better." He paused. "Your family's always welcome here, no questions asked." John smiled faintly. "That means a lot." "Here," David said, sliding a small envelope across the table. "What's this?" John asked, frowning. "Just something to help," David said. "It's a gift card, enough to cover several meals. Bring your family back soon, all right?" John's eyes welled up. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," David said with a smile, "by giving me a second chance." By the end of the week, the diner's atmosphere had shifted. Employees smiled more, regular customers lingered longer, and families felt welcome again. David stood near the counter, watching as Lisa bent down to hand a little boy a free cookie, something Robert would have scolded her for just days earlier. "Looks like things are back on track," Lisa said, walking over. "I forgot how much better it feels to just be nice to people." "That's what this place was always meant to be," David said, "a place for everyone." But he knew there was still more to fix, and tomorrow, Robert would return for his final conversation. The next morning, Robert arrived at Miller's Diner with a forced smile on his face, dressed in his manager's uniform. He walked in like nothing had happened. But as soon as he saw David standing by the counter, Robert's face turned pale. "Morning," David greeted coolly. "Glad you showed up." "Look, David," Robert started. "I get it. I crossed a line, but I've been here a long time. You know, I've always hit the sales targets. I'm good for business." "That's what you think?" David asked. "You believe sales numbers are all that matter?" "Well, yeah," Robert said. "At the end of the day, isn't that what keeps the lights on?" "You're wrong," David replied firmly. "This place is about people, not just profit, and you proved yesterday that you don't understand that." "Look, Mr. Miller," Robert said quickly, "I know how to run this place. I've been here for years. One bad call shouldn't cost me my job." "Robert, it wasn't one bad call," David said, voice rising. "You've been pushing away customers for months, treating families like they're beneath you, and turning this place into something it was never meant to be. Those people you're worried about, they just want handouts," Robert shot back. "I was protecting the business." "No," David countered. "You are protecting yourself by turning away the very people we promised to serve." Robert opened his mouth to argue, but David cut him off. "You've forgotten what this place stands for," David said, "and I can't trust someone like that to lead this team. You're fired." "Wait, you can't be serious," Robert stammered. "This is my career." "And you had plenty of chances to fix it," David said, "but instead you chose to push people away. I won't let you drag this place down any further." Robert muttered something under his breath, grabbed his things, and stormed out the door. With Robert gone, David knew he needed someone capable, someone who understood what Miller's Diner stood for. He found that person in Lisa, the waitress who had quietly supported customers when Robert refused to help. "I want you to take over as manager," David told her. Lisa's eyes widened. "Me? But I've never managed before." "I've seen how you treat customers," David said. "You don't just take orders, you care. You notice when people are struggling and you always try to help. That's what this place needs." "But what if I mess up?" Lisa asked nervously. "Then we'll fix it together," David said with a smile. "I believe in you." Lisa grinned. "All right, I'll give it my best." That afternoon, David gathered the staff for a meeting. "I know the past week has been stressful," David began, "but we're moving forward. Lisa's stepping in as manager, and I'll be sticking around to help out until we're back on track." The employees exchanged surprised glances. "Starting now?" David continued. This diner will go back to being a place where everyone feels welcome. No exceptions. If a family's struggling, we help them. If someone's alone and just needs a warm meal, we serve them. We don't turn anyone away. But, one cook spoke up, what if they can't pay? If someone's genuinely in need, David said firmly, we cover their meal, no questions asked. And what if people take advantage? Another employee asked. If that happens, David said, I'd rather lose a few dollars than turn away someone who genuinely needed our help. The room went quiet. Slowly, the tension in the air eased. We can fix this place, David said, but it's going to take all of us. Are you in? One by one, the employees nodded. Good, David said with a smile. Now, let's get back to work. Later that evening, David stood by the counter, watching as Lisa confidently led the floor. Employees moved with purpose. Customers lingered longer, and the warmth that Miller's Diner was known for had started to return. Then the front door jingled, and in walked John and his family. His daughter Emily clutched his hand tightly. David smiled and stepped forward. Welcome back, he said. We weren't sure if we should come, John admitted. Didn't know if we'd be welcome. You'll always be welcome here, David promised. Come sit. Dinner's on me tonight. Tears welled in John's eyes. Thank you for everything. As the family settled into their booth, Emily's laughter filled the air, a sound that reminded David why he started this diner in the first place. The morning after Robert's firing, the air inside Miller's Diner felt different, lighter, warmer. Employees moved with purpose, and conversations between staff and customers felt genuine. Still, David knew one good day wasn't enough. Real change would take time. David spent the next week working side by side with his employees. He greeted guests at the door, carried plates to tables, and even joined the kitchen team during the busiest rushes. He knew that if he wanted lasting change, he had to lead by example. Meanwhile, Lisa, the new manager, was thriving. She had taken full ownership of her role, making sure the diner felt welcoming again. She encouraged her staff to greet guests with kindness and take time to connect with regulars, something Robert had never valued. One afternoon, Lisa approached David with an idea. I was thinking, she said, what if we create a pay-it-forward board? Customers who want to help can prepay for a meal, and if someone comes in who's struggling, they can pick a card from the board. No questions asked. David grinned. I love it. Let's make it happen. By the next morning, a bright chalkboard stood near the entrance, decorated with colorful cards labeled, Meal Paid For, Enjoy. Customers quickly embraced the idea, and within days the board was filled with kind gestures. A week later, Robert returned to the diner, dressed in casual clothes instead of his old uniform. He looked less smug, more unsure. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, Robert said, standing before David. But I wanted to apologize. David crossed his arms. Why now? Because, Robert sighed. I've had a lot of time to think. I didn't just lose my job. I lost respect from my staff, my customers, even myself. He swallowed hard. I was wrong to treat people the way I did, especially that family. Apologies are easy, David said firmly, but change takes effort. I know, Robert replied. That's why I'm here. If there's anything I can do, cleaning tables, washing dishes, whatever, I just want to fix what I broke. David studied Robert's face for a moment. The arrogance was gone this time. The regret seemed real. All right, David said. One condition. You work under Lisa, and you'll follow her lead without question. Deal? Deal, Robert said without hesitation. I just want to prove I can do better. Over the next week, Robert worked quietly, scrubbing floors, cleaning tables, and taking orders with a humility David had never seen before. He greeted guests with warmth, even when they ignored him. One evening, David watched as Robert approached, a young man at the counter, someone who clearly couldn't afford much. Rough day? Robert asked the man softly. Yeah, something like that, the man mumbled. Without a word, Robert walked to the pay-it-forward board, grabbed a meal card, and handed it to the man. This one's on us, Robert said. Sit wherever you'd like. The man's eyes widened. Seriously? Seriously, Robert said with a smile. Enjoy. David, watching from the corner, knew Robert had finally understood what Miller's Diner was meant to. A few days later, John returned with his wife and 2 kids. This time, they walked in with confidence. Welcome back, Lisa greeted warmly. Glad to be back, John said, smiling. We've got your table ready, Lisa said, guiding them to a cozy booth near the window. Moments later, Robert, now calm and humble, approached the table. Hi, Robert said softly. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for the way I treated you last time. You didn't deserve that. John studied Robert for a moment. Thank you, he said. That means a lot. If there's anything I can do to make it right, Robert added, just let me know. You've already done enough, John replied, smiling. We're just happy to be here. That evening, after closing time, David stood with Lisa, Robert, and the rest of the staff by the front counter. This place feels different, Lisa said. It's better, Robert added quietly. That's because of all of you, David said, looking around the room. I started Miller's Diner with one goal, to create a place where everyone feels welcome. And thanks to your hard work, we're finally back to being that place. To Miller's Diner, Lisa cheered, raising her glass of soda. To Miller's Diner. The whole team echoed. David smiled, feeling proud. The diner's heart had been restored, not just because of better service, but because people had chosen to care.